If you were born somewhere between 1977 and 1983, if you grew up before the internet but somehow ended up living inside it, if Gen X feels just slightly too old, and Millennials feel just slightly too young, this video is for you, because you're not imagining it, you're not confused, you're not in between because something is wrong with you. You feel that gap because it's real. And once you understand what that gap actually is, you'll stop questioning yourself. You'll understand why you've always felt slightly out of place, not lost, not broken, just not fully seen. Living without a label does something to you. When Gen X talks about their childhood, you recognize it, but not completely. When Millennials describe their experience, you recognize that too. But again, not fully. And over time, that creates a strange feeling, like you're always translating, always adjusting, always slightly outside the group you're in. You've probably felt this in conversations, where you nod along, but something inside you thinks, yeah, but that's not exactly how it was for me. And here's the important part. That feeling is not small. Psychologists call this identity displacement, the experience of not having a clear place to belong. And if you felt that your whole life, this is why. Because you didn't grow up in a stable generation. You grew up in a shift, a very short moment in time, where one world ended and another one began. And you were right in the middle of it, not before, not after, during. And that changes everything. Generation X covers 1965 to 1980. Millennials start right after that. And if you were born right at that edge, you've probably noticed something your whole life. Neither label fully fits. Gen X feels slightly too old, too shaped by a world that was already disappearing by the time you became aware of it. Millennial feels slightly too young, too digital, too native to something you had to learn. You're close to both, but fully neither. Some researchers call this group Zennials, a microgeneration, a bridge. But the name isn't what matters. What matters is this. You had a childhood that disappeared while you were still living it, and you probably didn't notice, because you were just living it. It's 1985, you're 8 years old, school ends, you walk home, or you ride your bike, no phone, no tracking, no way for your parents to reach you. And once you stepped outside, you were gone. You remember that feeling, that complete freedom. You disappeared for hours. You found other kids. You built things, made up rules, broke them, argued, fixed it yourselves. No adults, no supervision, no one recording anything. And this is where your story becomes different, because none of it was documented. It just happened, and then it was gone. You came home when it got dark, dirty, tired, hungry, and that was the day. No photos, no videos, no proof it ever existed. That kind of childhood is gone now, completely. And here's the part people don't talk about. You didn't know it was ending. You were just living it. You were the last group to experience that fully, and that's not a small thing. Because while you were still living that life, the world was already changing, quietly. It's 1993. You're in a classroom. Someone mentioned something new. The internet. Nobody really understands it. It sounds distant, unimportant, but something about it feels different, like something is coming. And this is where the shift begins. Not all at once, slowly, almost invisibly. By the time you're 18, you have an email address. By your early 20s, you have a mobile phone. And then suddenly, everything changes. Social media. And this is where your life splits in two. Because you remember before. You remember what it felt like to be unreachable. You remember making plans and not being able to change them. You remember boredom with no instant solution. You remember silence. Real silence. But you also adapted. Fully. Email. Smartphones. Social media. It didn't feel foreign. It just became life. And this is what makes you different. You're not a digital native. But you're not disconnected either. Psychologists call this analog-digital bridge psychology. You can move between both worlds without thinking about it. And people don't realize how rare that actually is. Gen X often stayed anchored in the old world. Millennials never had one. But you understand both. And that gives you something powerful. But it also gave you something else. Something people don't talk about. You grew up in a world where mistakes disappeared. You remember this. You embarrassed yourself. And it was gone in a few days. You said something stupid, and nobody recorded it. You had awkward phases, and they faded. That's how identity used to work. You could try things, fail, adjust, move on, then everything became permanent. Everything visible, everything stored, everything searchable, and something shifted, even if you never said it out loud. Psychologists call this ambiguous loss, the feeling of losing something you can't fully explain. You remember privacy, but you can't describe it to people who never had it. You remember impermanence. But the world doesn't work like that anymore, so you adapted, you use the systems, you function perfectly in them, but underneath, something doesn't feel completely right. Like something important quietly disappeared, and nobody acknowledged it. And if you've ever felt that, this is why. And then, just as you were adjusting to all of this, something else hit you. The economy. And this is where it becomes personal. Because you did everything right. School, college, degree. You followed the path, the same path your parents trusted, the same path that worked before you. And then, it didn't work the same way anymore. You probably remember that moment. Watching people ahead of you succeed, with rules that no longer applied to you. Trying to enter a system that had already changed, and nobody told you. No one warned you. You weren't behind. You weren't unlucky. You arrived exactly when the rules stopped working. Psychologists call this economic precarity conditioning. You learned something early, that doing everything right doesn't guarantee anything. That effort doesn't equal outcome. That stability isn't promised. And that changes you. You become adaptable, flexible, careful. You plan, but you don't fully trust the plan. Because you've seen how quickly things can shift. Not because you failed, because the system changed while you were following it. And this is where everything comes together. Because now, you recognize both worlds. The independence of Gen X, the instability of Millennials. You understand both, but you don't fully belong to either. And this is the truth. You're not between generations. You are the transition. The exact point where the world changed direction. And once you see that, everything makes sense. Why you feel different. Why you adapt fast. Why you trust less. It's not random. It's when you grew up. Psychologists call this dual world adaptation, the ability to move between realities, between how things were and how they became. It's a skill, a real one. But it also carries weight. The weight of remembering something others never experienced. And the weight of adapting to something others never fully accepted. And if you've ever felt like you had to figure life out without a clear roadmap, this is why. There's nothing wrong with you. You were never meant to fit cleanly into a label. You grew up at the exact moment everything changed. You carry both worlds at the same time. You're not Gen X. You're not a millennial. You're the last group that knows what both feel like. The last group that remembers the silence before the noise. And for the first time, someone is finally saying it out loud. If this felt familiar, you're not alone. Because the generation that came after you didn't just grow up differently. They think differently. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Subscribe, because that's exactly what we're breaking down next.